North Korea launched another ICBM-class missile that hung in the air for approximately 45 minutes before landing in the waters off of Japan's exclusive economic zone. Following this, you had honestly what I would only be described as a scary situation. You had the South Korean military and the South Korean government contact the United States and our government as well as our military, and they discussed a military response to North Korea. Japan also called together their National Security Council, saying that the North Korean threat to their country's safety was real and it's there, it's happening, it's something that needs to be taken care of, it's real, needs to be addressed. Personally, I think it's a lot of posturing on the North Korean side. According to some analysts and some experts, they feel that this latest ICBM they launched could in fact hit cities on the West Coast, including Seattle, Los Angeles, San Diego, etc. Someone on the West Coast, I'm not too troubled by it. But before I go into detail, I would like to get the reactions from my panel. I'm actually going to start off this time with the producer. Dre, go ahead and speak up.
Okay. I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, you weren't expecting that, were you?
No.
Curveball. The Brandon's gone is anarchy.
It's crazy. Anyway, I mean, I'm concerned in general, just because I feel like there's a lot of economic actors that see either a Cold War or warm war or escalations of military conflict as a strong or as a viable way to get out of the economic slump that we've been experiencing despite the Dow hitting record highs. The fundamentals of the economy have been rather weak despite speculations on improving situations and such. And so anything that looks like military escalation concerns me. So whether it's talks about what we're going to get into, whether we're going to get into another Cold War with Russia or whether something's going to happen in North Korea, I get concerned. I think we need to reconsider what we're going to do with North Korea, because our plan was basically to starve them out, and China said, no, we're going to keep them alive long enough to produce this nuclear weapon, and then we're going to see what we're going to do afterwards. And so far, China has been saying that, well, everything in the world's a little crazy, so we're going to let North Korea be a little crazy too, apparently, is the best I can read. And so I don't know where it's heading, but it definitely has me concerned. That's where I'm at.
And so we're going to pass the ball over to Katie, the special guest, because nobody really likes John anyway.
Oh.
Story of my life, man. Story of my life.
Well, I mostly agree with what's been said already. I'm not that. There are other things I'm more concerned about than North Korea, and correct me if I'm wrong, but throughout the years, through the Obama administration, they do missile tests and shows of force like this quite often. Maybe they haven't gone quite so far. Maybe the technology is improving, but it seems like the North Korean government is a lot of bluster and not a lot of...
Katie is experiencing an electrical storm, so there may just be a bit of lag, or she may have been disconnected altogether. So we will go from there. But go ahead, Adair.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to give it to the white boy for once. John, you can speak while Katie is frozen.
Okay, and then
it's not your turn.
I fully understand and agree to the terms. I'm more concerned about our response to North Korea than I am concerned about North Korea's use of missiles. Noam Chomsky has said numerous times that North Korea over the years has behaved in a completely rational manner, and it was the Bush administration that basically stymied all talks about de-escalation and dismantling of the nuclear program. And then Obama continued that policy. So today I saw an article by John Bolton in the Wall Street Journal advocating for a first strike and invasion of North Korea. And what I see with that is you're going to basically put North Korea into a corner where their only response is going to be to attack. And they're not going to attack us. I mean, they might, but really their target is going to be South Korea, and millions of people will die. So I don't see North Korea as the threat. I see the neocons who are basically pushing for an invasion, a first strike, something along those lines in North Korea as the problem. And that's not to say like, oh, I support the North Korean government. I don't. I see them as being more rational than our neocons in the U.S. government, who see regime change, first attack, first strike, limited engagements as the first option that should be available rather than just diplomacy. I mean, look at what they did to the Iran deal this week. It's just, why is it that we are constantly pushing for that? And why is it that it's always the same goddamn people who are given the airtime to push for that? So that's where I stand on North Korea.
I think it's a very fair position. To clarify from some of Katie's earlier comments, North Korea does in fact launch missiles, not with this level of regularity and not with such rapid advancement as they've had in their technologies. I believe during the Obama administration, they launched 4 or 5 different missiles, all of them from stationary launch pads, all of them using, I believe, liquid fuel as opposed to solid fuel, none of them of the ICBM class. So there have been incredible advancements. I mean, we're talking advancements that experts were saying would take about 10 years for them to achieve, all within the span of a few months. I mean, we're talking going from the July 4th launch to now an ICBM, which I believe was the first time they reached an ICBM class missile. That missile had the capability of striking parts of Alaska and Hawaii. We are now talking about a missile that has the ability to hit the mainland, has the ability to hit Seattle, has the ability to hit LA, and possibly hit a little bit further than that. We do know that North Korea's stated goal is a direct attack on the United States, particularly on the East Coast. And I'm just getting word from Katie right now that her power went out. We do feel very bad for her. So we'll try to get her on next week. So that all being said, I don't feel North Korea is that big of a threat. I really, truly don't. I am, however, very much more concerned of a preemptive strike, of a military response to North Korea right now. North Korea is a lot of huster and bluster, and the fact of the matter is we have such a technological advancement. Excuse me, can't speak tonight. We're much more technologically advanced than North Korea. That's the long and short of it. It would not be so much of a war as it would be a massive loss of life, as John stated, in North Korea, because if they did develop a nuke, that is the easiest place for them to attack. Regardless of whether or not we have the THAAD missile system, it would be either Korea or Japan, not likely to be the US. So what is being positioned, though, is this idea that regime change is good, right? North Korea has huge exports of coal. That's what they rely on. That is what their economy is relying on. They rely on their trade with China in coal to keep even moderately afloat. So from my position right here as a communist in America, I openly say that I'm a communist, we see this idea that that regime change for the sake of getting natural resources from North Korea is probably on the board. We just had reports of Trump talking about he wants to fire or remove the head general in the Middle East right now because he believes that he's not winning. He also asked about, can we take Afghanistan's natural resources? So I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a regime change war, and it's going to be a natural resource war. I don't know how we avoid that. What do you two think?
Honestly, I mean, if you don't mind, I don't think we're going to avoid it. I think that with all of the parties and the way that they're positioning themselves and the way that even the resistance is positioning itself, we're getting to a point where we need to escalate, and we're going to escalate so that we can prove, I don't want to say our might, but prove that we're still invested in the imperialism that we've been pushing for a long time, and that we will back it up. We're with the way that we've fucked up in Iraq, fucked up in the Middle East, all over, we really need to show a quote unquote win, even though none of these things are actually a win. It's just we need to flex our muscle. And I think that that's what's going to happen. And whether it's Korea, a full-on attack in Syria, or maybe even Venezuela now, like I just see every single step that led up to the Iraq war and all of the bluster from the usual suspects going. And now we have a president who's being painted into a corner politically, whose only time he gets any positive press is when he bombs something. So I just see that this escalation is getting out of hand. It's getting out of control. And we don't have rational actors acting on the national stage in any of these governments.
Richard, did you have something to say after that? I think that's actually it's really poignant analysis right there, John. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that's basically what I've been, more or less what I've been thinking as well, and that didn't do much to assuage my concerns. But essentially, there's too many people all the players are in line for this. You have the economic actors that see the easy benefit for them. You have the military industrial complex in general. You have Donald Trump, who is, like you said, the only positive praise he gets is when he bombs someplace. And you have a Democratic and Republican parties that align 98-0 for sanctions against Russia, continuing to try and escalate and prove that both Russia isn't in charge of the United States or something to that degree, and that essentially, as you mentioned, that we're going to stand behind our imperialistic history and continue to pursue it despite what's obviously a swelling fervor among the far left, or however you want to characterize it.
The American left?
Yeah.
Please don't include us in this war hungry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly.
Katie's back!
Oh, Join's back, so I will get that.
Kim Jong-un must have cut my feed.
She's back. We're so happy to have her on again. So please, continue your thoughts on North Korea, and then we will kind of not so much rehash what we've been saying, but I would like to get a little bit of back and forth since she kind of kicks a lot of ass. You should follow her on Twitter, by the way, @RosettaJones.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, she's badass.
So what I was saying before was that I think there's a lot of bluster there. I'm not sure how many more missile tests they've done. I'm sorry if you've talked about this already. I'm not sure how many missile tests they've done in past administrations, but I remember hearing about them on a regular basis. And I understand that the threat seems magnified because we have a child running the country. But on the other hand, he's got a lot of very experienced military people around him to kind of, I don't know, corral that sort of thing in. And I'm just not that concerned about it overall. What have you guys said?
That's more or less what a lot of us think. We do, however, feel that there is going to be a nuclear strike, or not a nuclear strike. There's going to be a preemptive strike of some sort, some kind of military intervention by the United States into South Korea. That does open up another can of worms, though, considering that South Korea does have that, but North Korea has that in-kind defense treaty with China. So basically, if we go to war, if we commit any act of war against North Korea, we are there by proxy declaring war on China. So that for us, I think, complicates matters a little bit. I do think that U.S. oligarchs are going to continue to push for war, period. It's profitable. It's what makes them billions and billions of dollars. I do think that there's going to be some resistance on the left. But to clarify your earlier point, and I said this, but just probably you're here for it too, they did launch missiles during the Obama administration, but I believe it was only 4 or 5, and usually maybe 1 or 2 in a year. Recently, they've launched, I think, 6 or 7 just this year within the span of less than a month, from their first ICBM to one that could reach, the first one being able to reach Alaska, parts of Alaska and Hawaii, to one that can now reach the west coast of the United States, possibly even a little bit further than that.
The reason that I think that a lot of these oligarchs won't push for this particular war is because of China. That's why you see the Trump administration, as ham-handed as they've been, they're trying to kind of separate the ties between North Korea and China, because if they get China to abandon ship on North Korea, then it's free for all in terms of starting wars with North Korea. But while they have China on their side, I'm just not very concerned that we're going to do any kind of intervention.
Richard, John, do you guys have anything else to say in light of that? Because I don't think we talked about that while Katie had to drop out.
I think Katie's right. I think that, the hot war in North Korea is predicated upon the fact of getting China to basically back away. But we've been working on that position as a country and as a foreign policy for decades. So,
yeah, the likelihood of that transpiring in the immediate future is low. I do think over the next 4 to 6 years, there's going to be a lot of arguments over what is an act of war, not just with North Korea, but with a variety of nations around the country, or around the world. And I do think that they will be a part of that conversation, most likely with electronic hacking attacks and things of that sort.
So here's what I see happening, and because we didn't talk about the China aspect of the war, I still think that the U.S. has some type of strike while North Korea is aligned with China. And the reason why I think this is simple, because America needs to show its might. Right? America has this infantile need to say, I'm the biggest, I'm the baddest, you're going to do what I say. So North Korea is a soft target. North Korea is a soft target with lots of natural resources and coal. China, however, and this is how I think they spin it, China is a threat economically. So a lot of the U.S. oligarchs are like, we can make some money with China, but we could make more money with China out of play. The best way for China to be out of play is to take China to war. There's already been a lot of posturing with the Chinese military, including jet flyovers, Trump flying New Age bombers over the South China Sea, among other things. So that posturing has already began, and I think it's at a level that we haven't seen with past administrations. So that being said, I think a lot of the oligarchs are going to, they're going to push a war with North Korea, knowing that by proxy they're going to start a war with China. So this is the way of starting a war with China without actually having to go and declare war on China itself. China's going to declare war on us. Then we can say in the international arena, we're just defending ourselves against China because North Korea threatened us with nukes. So we're trying to save our own people with South Korea, and now China's getting involved, and China's actually the bully, not the U.S. That's how they're going to split it on an international level. I do think at the home level, though, because so many manufacturing jobs have gone to China, Trump is going to feed red meat to his base and say, we have to attack North Korea, and if China attacks us, then we can finally start bombing the shit out of China and bring some of our manufacturing jobs back. Because that's what he's going to sell. 1940s-esque world where he thinks war means manufacturing jobs. He knows war means money, but he can sell this to the base. He can sell this to middle America where the factories were and say, we'll rebuild your factories because we're at war with China because China's a big bully. I didn't do anything wrong. I just attacked North Korea. North Korea just wanted to kill us all because they hate our freedoms. We're going to see a lot of that same retired rhetoric. We're going to see it tied to economic reason. We're going to see a lot of economic reasons behind it. Whereas with the Middle East, we saw a lot of racism behind it. Racism fueled the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I think it's going to be economics that really fuel this war coming with North Korea and by proxy China. What do you guys think?
I don't think it will escalate to the point of China, and I don't think that they're going to use it as a crutch. I mean, most of our financial institutions are heavily vested in China as it is. Most of our companies that are international are heavily vested in China. Most of our pharmaceuticals are heavily vested in China. Like there's too much of a cross, I don't want to say cross-contamination, but there's too much of a cross current of capital invested in both countries that will prevent that worst case scenario of China being involved. But I do see if there's going to be a hot war in North Korea, China will back out for those exact same reasons, because of the fact that their capital is so invested in us, our capital is so invested in them, and it's incestuous at this point. Honestly, going forward in looking at a future, the future that I see based on the economic integration of the two countries is more along the lines of Firefly, where we're going to integrate cultures mostly because capital has been integrated as well. And so if
you mean with
the U.S.
China, what?
Yeah, exactly. But they're not really, I mean, yes, they're communists, but it's a capitalist communist kind of amalgam right now. So,
well,
yeah.
Politically, especially at the local level, the engagement is kind of ridiculous. Like you would presume that there wouldn't be the type of like democratic engagement, but there actually is at the local level in a variety of provinces within China. So China is not exactly as it's painted towards us, not so dissimilar than what I imagine it was like during the early 80s and 70s with Russia and the U.S. of the images that we painted of each other.
Yeah, and you look at most of the economists. Like one of my favorites is when you talk to Mark Blythe about it, and he talks about China being a black box, where the economy is essentially you're putting a whole bunch of capital in, but because the state controls the banks and they control what type of information is getting out, you don't necessarily know exactly what their economy is doing. So you're betting into a black box by pulling a slot machine almost. But for the past 15 years, 20 years, it's been paying out, and so we've been doubling down. And I don't mean that we, like as in the everyday U.S. citizen, but I do mean that we as in every capital institution that we have.
Other than unless you're invested in a 401k or some sort of mutual fund, in which case you probably are invested in China.
Or invested in a company that's heavily invested in China. So because of the integration, it's much greater than what we saw during any periods of World War. And I think that is going to be something that will prevent an all-out conflict between the U.S. and China, but I do see a conflict between between U.S. and North Korea, and China kind of backing away from North Korea as a direct result of that integration.
Well, it was an intentional act to try and link economies after World War II to prevent precisely the types of hot wars that we're talking about now.
Yeah,
and so,
exactly.
But the problem
and it's
is
worked.
And what it does though is it does change it doesn't stop the conflict. It just changes the grounds of which the conflict takes place. And so what we've been having is economic conflict with China for decades now, and it's been a mutually beneficial conflict.
Yes,
as many of these have been.
And on top of that, I mean, there's you look at some of the people like Matt Stoller has reported on this too. I mean, India and China were the dominant economies before.
One second, guys. We're going to talk. I feel we're going to talk about this all night. So I do want to cut this conversation a little bit short. I'm going to give the last word to Katie because I do want to move on.
Okay.
I just want to say kudos for the Firefly reference, and I totally agree, basically, with everything that John just said, because our economies are so intricately linked. The value of the dollar is linked. Everyone, whether you know it or not, has some sort of link to the Chinese economy, and I don't think there's going to be an all-out war. Like you said, we might do some kind of spycraft or surveillance kind of thing, and have like a cyber war maybe that escalates. But as far as declaring all-out war on China or North Korea, for that matter, I can't see it happening in the near future.